Sensational news. Iranian troops on the border with Ukraine and the EU. Tehran has sent its military to the Zapad 2025 exercises. The US is deploying strategic aviation to Europe due to Russia's attack on Poland. Will World War III begin? A critical situation on the front. Russia may encircle Kupiansk. Finally, new sanctions. Europe plans to stop issuing tourist visas to Russians. The Kremlin is raising the stakes. Medvedev has announced an invasion of Finland. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is in critical condition. 6 out of 7 pillars of nuclear safety have been violated. Hello, my name is Yulia Kokan, and right now, here are the top stories. But first, please like this video. And subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on YouTube. Poland has begun moving troops to the border with Belarus. This is happening on the eve of the large-scale Russian-Belarusian exercises Zapad 2025, which will begin as soon as September 12th. Listen, don't you think that the drone attack on Poland and the exercises on the border with Poland are related events? Aren't these interconnected events? In addition, our sources in the defense forces report that Iranian military personnel will also take part in these exercises. The first group of Iranians, numbering 115 people, has already arrived in Belarus, and another 600 are expected to arrive soon. The presence of Iranians increases tensions with NATO and neighboring countries and demonstrates Minsk's willingness to become a platform for anti-Western allies. Experts see this as a step toward creating an anti-Western bloc. Belarus is turning into a testing ground for developing tactics and testing drones and missiles. Our sources report that such actions increase the risk of provocations at the borders and deepen Lukashenko's dependence on Moscow and Tehran. The presence of Iranian military personnel is not just a part of the exercises, but also a potential base for future offensive operations. That's the news. New military bases are being built in Belarus. One of these facilities near Minsk could have strategic significance for Russia in its war against Ukraine. After all, according to experts, it is precisely there that Russian Oreshnik ballistic missiles could be deployed. The scheme's project of Radio Liberty, together with journalists from the Belarusian Service of Radio Liberty and the Estonian publications Delphi Estonia and Easti Express, analyzed images taken by satellite by Planet Labs over the territory of Belarus. Journalists created a map of military facilities in Belarus, which includes both completely new and modernized old military bases and training grounds. These, in particular, will be used during the joint exercises with Russia, Zapad 2025, which will take place from September 12 to 16.
Analyzing photos from Planet Labs, journalists drew attention to 2 new sites near the border with Ukraine. The first is on the outskirts of the city of Gomel, more than 30 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. It is likely a future military base. Since the end of 2023, the area has been cleared and trees have been cut down. Infrastructure is now actively being built from the cleared forest. In particular, Planet Labs photos from September 4th show numerous pieces of construction equipment. The size and infrastructure of this settlement correspond to those of existing military bases in Belarus. That means it could potentially accommodate a military brigade with an average strength of about 3,000 personnel.
Construction of the second facility near the Ukrainian border in Belarus began in 2024. It is likely a military base as well. It is located south of Minsk on the grounds of the former Soviet military camp number 25 Pavlovka, where the Slutsk unit was previously stationed. The 306th Strategic Missile Regiment.
Satellite images from August 2025 show that warehouse facilities have already been built on this site. They are protected by fortification structures. There are 3 hangars for equipment, as well as foundations laid for other buildings, in particular for accommodating personnel. In satellite photos, journalists also noticed 3 more sites nearby, connected by roads with partially constructed foundations for future buildings.
It is still unknown which specific unit of the Belarusian or Russian army will be stationed there. Officially, the Belarusian authorities have not commented on this construction. Polish military expert Konrad Muzyka commenting on the new construction to the Belarusian service of Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty, suggested that the base could be a place where the Oreshnik will be stored. Previously, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin himself stated that the newest Russian intermediate-range ballistic missile, Oreshnik, could be deployed in Belarus by the end of 2025. What do you think the Russians and Belarusians are really planning? Share your thoughts in the comments. Honestly, I was surprised by the fact that the last episode, so many people from Europe, Moldova, Kazakhstan, and even the USA watched it. And so many people support Ukraine. Thank you for your feedback. I'm curious, from which country are you watching this particular episode? Be sure to write in the comments, and I'll be happy to read and like your comments this evening. Meanwhile, let's continue. Now comes the most interesting part. Yesterday, Russia once again launched a massive attack on Ukraine. 415 Russian drones were launched, and thanks to our air defense, 386 were shot down. Missiles were also launched. 27 out of 42 cruise missiles were shot down. A new record from the Russians. But the attack last night was not only against Ukraine.
I'm in Poland. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it.
Yes, Russia deliberately attacked the Poles.
Today there was yet another escalatory step. Russian Iranian Shaheds operated in Polish airspace, in NATO airspace. Not just a single Shahed, which could be called an accident, but at least 8 attack drones aimed toward Poland.
For the first time in history, NATO engaged Russian strike assets in combat. So during the night, Poland scrambled its aircraft to shoot down the Shaheds. Air defense systems were brought to full combat readiness. Moreover, they took to the skies an Italian Air Force plane and Dutch F-35s. The sound of aircraft was clearly heard by the locals. And they saw footage like this. Oh my God. The publication Rzeczpospolita reports that 23 drones entered Polish airspace. Some media outlets reported 10 UAVs. Later, Tusk reported 19 violations of the airspace. The airports in Rzeszów, Lublin, and Warsaw were closed. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk also responded to this attack. He says that the drones posing a threat were shot down.
Last night, Polish airspace was agitated by a huge number of Russian drones. Those drones that posed an immediate threat were shot down.
But there were hits. According to local media, a Shahed drone hit a residential building in Iriki, Lublin voivodeship. Fortunately, no people were injured. And here, in fact, are the images of the downed drone. People are in panic. Republican Congressman Joe Wilson stated that Putin has declared war on Poland. The Poles themselves are urgently calling up territorial defense reservists in 10 voivodeships because of Russian UAVs. Journalists also started bombarding Trump with questions about the Russian attack on Poland. But of course, he ignored everything.
Mr. President, what is the response to Russia? And what about the fire in Florida? And the Russian drones over Poland? Thank you.
Just imagine, to shoot down 10 Russian Shaheds, Polish F-16s, Dutch F-35s, Italian reconnaissance planes, and joint NATO aerial refuelers were all involved. The reaction from the Poles and NATO is predictable. Toothless, deeply concerned, and all that. Drone raids there are not considered an attack. Tusk stated that this is a large-scale provocation. A provocation? According to NATO sources speaking to Reuters journalists, NATO does not consider the drone incident to be a Russian attack. Proof that the Kremlin was actually preparing an attack on Poland is the fact that Russian UAVs were found with Polish and Lithuanian SIM cards, not just today, but previously as well.
In early July, information was published in Poland itself that among the wreckage of Russian drones shot down in Ukraine, they are finding 4G modems with SIM cards from Polish operators. In addition to Polish SIM cards, a SIM card from a Lithuanian operator was also found in one of the drones. The report stated that this directly indicates Russia's preparation for drone flights over the territory of these countries and for testing connections to mobile networks.
That same Article 5 of NATO does not automatically obligate member states to go to war. Each country decides for itself how to act. So far, the Poles haven't taken any action. even though this isn't the first shahed for them. But Zelensky suggested doing something. Moreover, he offered help.
Ukraine is ready to provide Poland with the necessary available data regarding this Russian strike. Ukraine is ready to help Poland build an appropriate alert and defense system against such Russian threats.
He says that Ukraine has long proposed to its partners to create a joint air defense system. It seems they don't need it for now. But that's for now. Meanwhile, Russia claimed that the drones were not theirs. They say there is no evidence and that Warsaw's accusations are unfounded. After the attack, fragments of a Russian missile and debris from 7 drones were found in Poland. This is the first time a missile has entered the country's airspace. This was reported by TVN24, citing Polish Ministry of Internal Affairs spokesperson Karolina Galenka. Drone debris was found in Kosnówka, Wielka Chwoła, Cesniki, Woken and Krzywowierzba Kolonia in the Lublin voivodeship. Parts of downed drones were also found in Mnieszków in the Łódź voivodeship and in Olesno in the Warmian-Masurian voivodeship. In Ichiłaew Lublin voivodeship, debris from a missile of unknown origin was discovered. The media also reported that an American B-52 strategic bomber is preparing to take off from the continental United States toward Europe. As for the Ukrainians themselves, of course, we didn't sleep last night, just like me, so I've gathered a fresh batch of memes about the attack on Poland for you.
I'm just wondering if the Poles will be offended at us because the Shaheds flew over Volyn. I think the authorities are using the Shaheds in Poland to distract us from the disgraceful match with Azerbaijan. Bohdan Khmelnytsky is missing out on this kind of action, for crying out loud. Why are you laughing at Poland? Well, it's her first time experiencing something like this. She just doesn't know yet that scrambling all the aircraft and worrying won't help. Don't you remember your own first time? We were running around like idiots trying to cover up some marks or something.
What do you think Poland's response to this attack will be? I'll bet $100 it won't be anything significant, they'll just be concerned. And you, write your own versions in the comments, it'll be interesting to read them. Sanctions in action. Russians may be left without Schengen visas and barred from entering Europe. The European Commission may include this in the 19th package of sanctions against Russia. A ban on issuing tourist Schengen visas to citizens of the aggressor country, since there are now too many tourists from Russia. The package presentation is expected as early as September 12th, but the plan is not final yet. The possible inclusion of such a point in the new sanctions package was reported by the Italian agency ANSA. It is noted that the information was obtained from sources within the European Commission. The reason for the initiative to cancel visa issuance, according to sources, is the large number of Russians entering the Schengen zone in the summer of 2025. And what do you think about the idea of leaving Russians without Schengen visas and not letting them into Europe? Do you support it? Then give this video a like. Don't agree? Explain your reasoning in the comments. Leading Russian propaganda channels are calling Russia's airstrikes on the village of Yarova in the Donetsk region fake. The day before, 24 Ukrainian pensioners died here who simply came to collect their pensions.
Kyiv's reports about a Russian armed forces strike on the village of Yarova in the DPR during pension distribution are fake. This was reported by the Telegram channel War on Fakes. A source from the channel in the Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed that the Russian armed forces did not carry out any strikes on the village today.
Military journalist Yuri Butusov writes that this distraction tactic is exactly reminiscent of the Kremlin's spread of the fake about Bucha.
Same handwriting, same killers. Russia is a country of monsters, committing mass murders and crimes in the style of Hitler.
And now to news from the front. This is Kupiansk, a city on the border. The 10th Army Corps has published unique footage from Kupiansk. Daily strikes by artillery, aerial bombs, and drones do not stop. The enemy is trying to break through the defenses and capture the city. Where they can't advance, they simply destroy everything around them. The occupiers are striking homes, schools, and hospitals. The Russian army is not just destroying infrastructure, it is wiping Kupiansk off the face of the earth. The situation remains very difficult. Despite the danger, there are still civilians in the city. And right now, they are the main target of the enemy. The armed forces are doing everything possible to hold Kupiansk and prevent the occupiers from advancing. This was reported by the 10th Army Corps. The city is holding on. Military expert Alexander Kovalenko is also commenting on the situation in Kupiansk.
What is happening in Kupiansk? The situation is truly difficult. No one is saying that it's easy here or that things have somehow stabilized. Quite the opposite. Recently, the Russian command decided to reinforce its units from the West Group of Forces, specifically the 122nd Motorized Rifle Regiment, with additional forces. From the 1st Tank Army, they are trying to gain a foothold in the northwestern part of the city, and they are operating precisely in the direction of a sabotage and reconnaissance group, with groups of 2 to 3 people, sometimes 4 or 5. But it should be understood that, as of today, there is no encirclement of Kupiansk.
The media reports that the Russian command has sent specialists from the Strategic Missile Forces Technical School into the assault. Kapustin Yar Missile Test Range, Astrakhan region. They suffered heavy losses, both killed and missing in action. The horrific losses in Ukraine are forcing the Russians to send everyone to their deaths, even missile specialists. Here's what the mother of one of the contract soldiers has to say. Listen for yourself.
The wounded guys were left at their position. They were left without food or water. They were so exhausted that they couldn't walk. I want to know whose order it was. Not to evacuate the wounded. And just starves the soldiers. I want to ask a question. Don't you see the boys in your dreams?
Well, to end on a positive note, here's something uplifting from our guys. Some unique footage like this has appeared online. The pilots of Signum use fiber optic drones to hunt enemy personnel and equipment in difficult terrain. I never cease to admire the Ukrainian warriors. The Russian army at the front is 3 times larger, but our heroes are holding the line and even advancing in some places. Write them some warm words of support in the comments. I have many friends there and I know they're watching us. It's no trouble for you, but it means a lot to them. The murder of a young Ukrainian woman by an American criminal right in a subway car and caught on camera has shocked both Ukraine and America. Even President Trump responded to the tragedy. Details in the report.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The photo of 23-year-old Ukrainian Irina Zarudskaya, who died in the US, is being shown on all American TV channels. The murder happened back at the end of August, but only now has it come to light. North Carolina police have released shocking footage from the subway. The young woman entered the subway car and sat down in front of a man in red. She was just looking at her phone, unaware that within a few minutes he would stab her several times. After killing the young woman, the man walked to the other end of the subway car. Drops of blood were left on the floor of the train after him. Passengers looked on in confusion and stepped over the bloody trail. The refugee from Ukraine, who had fled to the US to escape the war, died at the scene. Police detained 34-year-old D. Kartopolov Brown Jr., whose criminal record dates back to the 2000s. 14.
Court documents show that he had been in the criminal justice system for over 10 years. He had 14 prior cases in Mecklenburg County, including a 5-year sentence for armed robbery. His mother told local television that earlier this year she tried to have her son involuntarily committed to a psychiatric clinic. This was after he began behaving aggressively. At home, doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia. Court documents also show that since 2011, Brown has faced charges of making threats, petty theft, and grand larceny, although some of these cases were later dismissed.
Interestingly, just this January, Brown was arrested after repeatedly calling 911. In one of the hospitals, he claimed that people were trying to control him. The judge released him without bail. He was given a written order to appear in court. And while local media discussed the murder of the refugee from Kyiv, wondering whether women are now afraid to ride the subway, And while giving advice not to sit with your back to others and not to listen to music, politicians are exploiting the death of the Ukrainian woman.
There are evil people, and we have to deal with this. If we don't deal with it, we won't have a country. And I have created the first ever Ministry of Justice task force to eradicate anti-Christian prejudice. And among those who are a bit naive and not very well read, there is a tremendous anti-Christian bias. We haven't heard about it, we don't think about it. You hear about anti-Semitism, but you don't hear about anti-Christian sentiment. We have a strong anti-Christian bias, but we will put an end to it quickly. I would say that today we live in a completely different world than we did a year ago. It seems almost perfect.
Trump drew a parallel between Irina's murder and the threats he himself has received to deploy federal agents and National Guard troops to Chicago and other cities run by Democrats. This episode, more than ever, plays right into the hands of the 47th president and his attempts to establish new order in America. Other MAGA supporters also spoke out, echoing rhetoric similar to their leaders. A similar case where politicians exploited the tragedies of Ukrainian refugees recently occurred in Germany as well. For example, the far-right party picked up on the murder of a 14-year-old girl from Mariupol by an Iraqi citizen who was supposed to be deported but wasn't, and used it for their own agenda. This incident allowed the AfD to once again accuse the authorities of incompetence and to stoke public sentiment.
It is becoming a breeding ground for fascism, even faster than Ukraine. This was stated by Andrei Kartapolov, the head of the Russian State Duma Defense Committee. According to him, Russia is ready to defend its interests. And if the policies of the Finnish authorities lead to tragic consequences, the responsibility will be on their conscience. But it seems Kartapolov isn't the only one who's lost his mind. The autumn aggravation has also caught up with former Russian president and alcoholic Dmitry Medvedev. First, Medvedev accused unfriendly countries of trying to wage biological warfare against Russia by importing foreign microorganisms. Utter nonsense. But that's not all. Medvedev, with a straight face, or rather a drunken one, claims that Finland is preparing to attack Russia. Our journalists know all the details.
Finland is preparing a staging ground for an attack on the Russian Federation. The Russian politician and alcoholic Dmitry Medvedev wrote about this in a column for the propagandists at TASS, accusing Finnish President Alexander Stubb of pushing the country toward military conflict.
Russia understands that, first and foremost, it is feared because of its unpredictability. Accordingly, it needs to put that on display, to publicly highlight its most unhinged representatives. Accordingly, we often hear statements from Kadyrov and Medvedev because these figures have been assigned the role in the Russian power system of acting as blunt instruments.
Medvedev claims that Helsinki is pursuing a confrontational course, preparing for war with Russia. And it seems Medvedev is preparing the ground for an attack on his country.
First of all, there's an obvious joke that he might have meant either the country or a bottle of vodka, as if someone wants to attack him. But jokes aside, Finland shares a 1,273-kilometer land border with Russia. The maritime border, such as the one along the Baltic Sea, isn't even being counted here. Plus, Finland is a NATO country. It's worth noting that Finland had no intention of joining NATO. That was the case until Russia's aggression against Ukraine.
The former president of Russia identified Finland's allies as the NATO alliance, which is allegedly fully involved in these matters and is now actively mastering land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace. Thus, according to Medvedev, a command structure for the alliance's forward land forces is being established in close proximity to the Russian border, and their numbers could be increased to a full brigade. 5,000 personnel. The report also mentions the deployment of a NATO land forces regional command headquarters in the city of Mikkeli and the establishment of a new garrison in the settlement of Ivolova, which is located 40 kilometers from Russian territory.
Russia wants to restore not even the Soviet Union, but the Russian Empire. That is why it views Finland as part of the Russian Empire. It sees the Baltic states as parts of the Soviet Union. It even regards Poland as a potential component of Russian greatness.
But Dmitry Medvedev's fantasies and statements did not end there. He continued to search for enemies of Russia from abroad. It turns out that Russia's enemies are fighting not only with physical weapons but also with biological ones, bringing them into Russia along with non-native species of plants, animals, and microorganisms.
You always have to come up with something. Before you had to invent a dirty bomb. Now it's biolabs. There weren't any before, and now they're returning to this topic again. That is, to keep society constantly on edge. This tension, this sense of threat from the West. And no one cares that nothing like this exists in reality. The main thing is to talk about it, to say that we're afraid of this, that this is what they dream about, that all they think about is how to seize our rich Russia.
Medvedev noted that the spread of imported organisms leads to pandemics, allergies, the death of animals, crop losses, a reduction in forest and hunting resources, and also causes economic damage. Therefore, this issue requires careful attention from the state.
The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, under the control of the occupiers, ended up in a pre-catastrophic state. 6 out of 7 pillars of nuclear safety have been violated. This was stated by Rafael Grossi, head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. We have gathered information about what is currently happening at the plant and what the current situation could mean for the nuclear safety of the entire European continent.
The situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is becoming critical. At the plant, 6 out of 7 pillars of nuclear safety have been violated. This was stated by IAEA head Rafael Grossi at a meeting with the Board of Governors.
The safety situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant remains unstable. 6 out of 7 safeguards are under threat. There is only one external power line left, which creates serious safety risks. All 6 reactors are in a cold shutdown state, and none of them can be safely restarted under the current conditions. Rafael Grossi, Director General of the IAEA.
All key components of nuclear and physical protection were identified by the IAEA immediately after the start of the full-scale invasion and occupation of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. These are physical integrity, absence of pressure on personnel, reliable power supply, uninterrupted logistics, radiation monitoring, and functioning communication channels. All 6 reactors are in a cold shutdown state and none of them can be safely restarted, at least due to the lack of sufficient personnel. If before the occupation there were about 11,000 employees at the nuclear power plant, now only 1,000 or 2,000 are there constantly. The occupiers are already acutely feeling the personnel shortage themselves, and this is evident even from the job postings they are putting out. In the media, they are advertising for critical job categories. The water level in the cooling pool has alarmingly dropped to a critically low and dangerous level, posing a significant and immediate threat. Furthermore, it is unequivocally impossible to effectively address and resolve this grave and escalating problem without the essential and indispensable involvement of Ukraine.
The water level in the cooling pond has dropped to 13.4 meters, approaching the threshold of 12 meters below which the cooling system fails. Measures to isolate the supply channel provide short-term relief, but a long-term solution is needed, such as building a pumping station. Ongoing military actions, including attacks in the immediate vicinity of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant site, are causing serious concern, increasing stress and risks. Rafael Grossi, Director General of the IAEA.
Recently, Russia did not allow IAEA experts to access the newly constructed dam near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, nor during the weekly inspection. Experts were denied access to the western part of the turbine hall of one of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant reactors. In addition, the mission recorded sounds of military activity near the occupied plant. Before the occupation, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant had 4 high-voltage supply lines and 6 lower-voltage lines. Now, if we're lucky, the plant is operating on just 2. Only 2 lines in total. Periodically, once a month or even more often, these lines are damaged because of ongoing military actions nearby. And it takes some time, 1 or 2 days, to restore one of the lines. But there are only 2 lines in total. Recently, a representative from the Kremlin, Putin's trusted envoy Sergei Kiriyenko, visited Enerhodar and the nuclear power plant. The main topic is preparing key infrastructure facilities and the nuclear power plant for the upcoming autumn-winter period. And according to propaganda media, there are no problems at the plant. But Ukrainian experts and IAEA head Grossi are convinced that the plant is on the brink of disaster.
The Russians are demanding that Ukraine surrender without a fight about 6,000 square kilometers of territory that they have not yet captured. By force, this was stated by US Vice President J.D. Vance. At the same time, according to him, Ukrainians want security guarantees from Europeans or from someone else, because they want to be sure that in the event of a deal, the Russians won't come back in a few months or years demanding even more. Vance noted that now we have reached a stage where the range of issues has been narrowed down to just a few key ones.
One of them concerns territory. The Russians want to get about 6,000 square kilometers that they have not yet conquered by military force. That's what the Russians want. On the other hand, the Ukrainians want security guarantees, either from the Europeans or from someone else.
In addition, according to Vance, Donald Trump does not see any point in the economic isolation of Russia. According to him, the US will continue to work towards ending the war in Ukraine and hopes for a peaceful agreement. If the war in Ukraine ends, the White House will be open to a full range of productive economic agreements with Russia. And what do you think about the statement from the US Vice President? What are your thoughts? How do you like our news? Let us know what we should change. To become better, we will definitely take your feedback into account. In the meantime, please like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel, Ukraine Today, so you don't miss future episodes. See you soon!